How are we doing, Kansas Jayhawks fans? This is your host, Nick Rondeau, bringing at you some Jayhawks Daily, and we're here to talk about, some potential recruits we're looking at. I know we always look at those, but we're looking at some 26, some 27, and I always am very eager to hear your guys' questions of what content you guys want me to cover, and we can jump right into it. I'm even repping my KU jersey today with my favorite player on the back, Frank Mason, Naismith Player of the Year, but we're hopping into a shooter who could be just as good as Frank Mason. Who knows? But that's going to be Luke Barnett. So not a name that I'm sure everyone's kind of heard before. He's not going to be a top 100 recruit. So Luke Barnett, he's a 6'4", kind of a smaller 180-pound rising senior. He's ranked about 144 for 24/7 Sports. ESPN, they don't go beyond 100 really. So he's outside of their top 100. But the thing about this guy is he's a sharpshooter. And I've done many pods before where I've just kind of stated the importance and, what I at least love as a fan is you love to see guys hitting threes. How many times do we love seeing Devontae Graham and Frank Mason in that backcourt just nailing down threes? Because those are big comebacks. Those are huge moments that we can always remember. Grady Dick a couple years ago. Johnny Furphy, he had a couple of moments. But, this guy, Luke Barnett, I kind of spoke about him, and unfortunately, we didn't end up getting Bo Ogden. I would have been talking about it. Everyone knows that. He did end up going to Texas. Not a huge shocker considering, that's where his dad is the GM for Texas basketball. I get, how was I supposed to know? But realistically, this guy is a very similar kind of play style, but he's an excellent shooter. I mean, watching some of the film from this guy, his release is so quick. It's so beautiful. It's almost Curry-esque. I mean, it's smooth, it's simple. It's premeditated. He knows exactly when he's taking the three. I mean, I just had to pull up some of his game tape, not even just game tape, his statistics from some of these games. Just unbelievable performances. So Luke Barnett, like I said, 6'4", kind of a guard, outside the top 100, 4-star still, but he plays at Maitre Dei, Santa Ana, California. In Santa Ana, California, that is. But he also, he plays, like everyone, in AAU tournaments, EYBL circuits, stuff like this. But in the EYBL season, he played for the Arizona Unity. He averaged about 13 points. His best performance was in May. He scored 27 points, knocked down 5 threes during his Memphis session. So that's just, that's a lot tougher competition. You're not going against just traditional, tiered high school competition. But, kind of getting into his high school games, I mean, these are just unbelievable. So he set his high school scoring record. Always love that from any recruit. He had a 55-point outing against a high school called Hoover. He hit 12 threes in that game. There are multiple others, so 40-point games where he's hitting 10 threes. I mean, it's just so smooth. I mean, it's the guy runs in transition with the defender right in front of him, and he just pulls it right in his face. One-on-one, I think he has the opportunity to develop and grow and, be able to beat guys on the dribble and get by. And he's even, kind of stated that in some of his interviews. He said, I've got a lot to work on. I've got a lot to develop, but I know my strengths, and he's a great shooter. But he knows that he can still get to the rim and finish. He's just got to get a little bit better at that, a little bit more bulking. These are the top 100, outside the top 100 guys. They're going to be projects more, but he can contribute pretty early on, and that he also stated his biggest fit that he wants is to actually fit the playing style. And 2026 recruit, Talon Kinney could use a shooter, and I know people are saying Bardwell's going to reclassify potentially. Well, I'll keep you updated on that, or the recruiting class is getting too full. I really do think Flory's going to leave us this year. I just think he's going to have too spectacular of a year that he can't turn down the NBA. So I see another, spot beyond the Darren Peterson and the transfers going out. But more than that, I just see potential with Luke Barnett, and this is a guy that Talon Kinney needs to be playing next to. I mean, yes, Cole Rosario hopefully is what we think he's going to be, which is going to be an absolute stud, a rising stud at that. But Luke Barnett is a guy to keep an eye out for just because his release is so smooth. He has it's not just his perimeter shooting, it's kind of his shot in general. It's very quick release, but he also kind of rises up over defenders. They try to contest, but it's very easy. It's already gone by the time they're jumped up, and it's just something that this is the day and age. Curry changed basketball, and guys like Luke Barnett are going to be coming up scoring 55 with 12 makes. All swishes. I watched them; they were all swishes. So that's something we're very excited about. But yes, he's coming up. He's going to be recruiting. Going to be visiting late night at the Fog. October 17th. He'll also be with Ken Lozier. So, again, that nothing has changed at that point. We haven't heard if he's canceling. He could, with Talon Kinney. That makes it a little bit harder. But this guy, he kind of knows, there's potential to kind of fit in, and he'll see the environment, he'll see the screaming, and then the fans going crazy. It'll be a good time. But he does have a little competition to get him, and a lot of it's kind of smaller schools. He's had a lot of familiarity with UC San Diego. He's already made many visits there, I would say. Well, he said, not me saying this. But also he'll be at Miami he'll be at Miami this weekend. He went to UNLV in early September. He kind of said about his UNLV connection. They've been out to a bunch of his practices. They've been the most aggressive, he said. He really likes their coaches. Arizona State, he's also got an offer from. He said they've been in contact with me since, his last AAU game. More recently, they've kind of pushed it, and they've, it seems like people are really, they don't want, glue on their feet. They're trying to really get the ball rolling. And if people, unlike Kansas, have not really gotten that recruit, they're going to push a lot harder. They even said Villanova literally recruited him after one of his last games at the circuit because he put up like 27. Why wouldn't you? You have scouts there, get in contact with you and say, Coach, we need this guy as an offer. And, those are some of the, those aren't the smaller schools. UC San Diego, that's a smaller school. It offers him probably a starting spot immediately, probably, carte blanche when it comes to the offense. He can do whatever he wants, but can he develop as much as he could at KU? Can he learn the skills? Can he be that potential NBA guy at a UC San Diego? Maybe, but he could transfer from there. It's just these aren't always people we're going to get next year. I'm going to keep these in mind because they could have great years at these smaller schools or even other bigger schools. And they've still been in the door at KU facilities. They still potentially have that opportunity to jump right back in, fit into Bill Self's system. So keep an eye out for Luke Barnett. I'm hoping that goes excellent because everyone's looking for Luke. KU might have an opportunity to get him, and I'd be very excited. But now kind of hopping in to a little bit more thinking in the future. Yes, people, we got Javon Bardwell already for 2027. We're ahead of the curve on so many teams that already have that recruit. But yet people are saying, and like I'm seeing just as much, Javon Bardwell, given his connection to OTE, he maybe Talon Kinney really is convincing him, saying, hey, come with me next year. You're that good. Come with me 2026. Maybe reclassify. But, who else is in that 2027 class? What's Bruce Branch III? And that's not just anybody. He's the number one recruit in 24/7 Sports. He's number 2 in ESPN. And he's so talented. And the weirdest thing you ever see from a number 1 or number 2 recruit, which has baffled me on all of the analysis I've kind of done and, all the tape I've seen, is everyone's saying he's, not a lock for a one and done, which is not what I'm confused about, but saying he's more of a developmental project, which I can kind of see in the game, and I kind of see in, I guess, his progression. He wasn't, an immediate, out of middle school type of recruit guy. But what is a little bit just more confusing is his game looks not flawless, but pretty darn close to it. I mean, it's unbelievable to see, how well he is. So Bruce Branch III, get into him. 5-star recruit, 6'7", small forward, kind of shooting guard, playing at Prolific Prep. Theron Peterson, if you want to help us out 2 years in advance, tell him exactly what you saw at Prolific Prep, see what you see now. But he's originally from Gilbert, Arizona, so he's going to have that Arizona connection, who's got an offer out to him. But his shooting is already so legitimate. It's so talented already that it gets people. It gets me excited, obviously, but I think it's getting a lot of scouts excited because apparently that was a worse part of his game. Seeing the tape from when he was younger, I'm not boots on ground seeing all that. I'm just seeing the clips and analysis post, but this guy's an absolute weapon. I mean, he kind of already has the length and size for a great wing, great cuts, great intuitiveness to make those big plays. But I guess he already had that kind of handle and touch that he had when he was shorter. It must have been maybe a later growth spurt or something along those lines. But he really is confident in his shot, and it really shows. I mean, the guy shot on his 3SSB season, he had 39% from three with more than 4 attempts a game. That's a very good shooter, especially if that's not your main weapon. He can still crash, absolutely, drive to the rim. But it's very impressive to see someone who's that dynamic of a creator to also, help the shooting average kind of get up. 39% from someone, I would be thrilled if Darren Peterson's shooting 39% from three this year. I'd be thrilled if Jaden Dawson shot over 40, but if he's even shooting 39, that's just, usually my number I'm keeping out is 37. That's a good number. We'll keep it around then. But that's one thing about this guy. I mean, I've seen what people are saying about him. Jeff Goodman, great hoops insider for college basketball, said this guy's the whole package. If people aren't looking at him right now, they need to start looking at Bruce Branch III because this guy is going to be a star in college hoops. And, they kind of say he's a little bit more of like a finesse player than, a powerful, I'm not going to, drop my shoulder and kind of work into you. He'll hit, maybe it's European what they say with the Euro step around, but I think it's very impressive to see kind of how people are viewing him as a project, but this guy already seems like he could contribute this year if he joined the team. I mean, he's just that smooth, that silky. He always has his eyes up, always looking for a teammate. I think he averaged about 5 or 6 assists a game as well, and a lot of that just comes from pulling the extra coverage on his shot. And his eyes are always up finding a good cutter, and he's also that good cutter. So he's got his eyes up to catch the ball as well. So I'm very, very excited because we do have an offer out to him. We got an offer out. We're one of the last teams to get an offer out. Offered in June, of right before the summer. NC State had an offer as well out to him in July. Like I said, he's from Arizona, so Arizona's got an offer out to him. Louisville's got an offer out to him. Duke, BYU, Houston. All the big schools, but yet the biggest question mark he's keeping everything under wraps. He's not telling anyone anything really. Yes, it's 2027. It's early. Maybe he wants to see if he can solidify the number one spot at ESPN, really get that 5-star, ranking and, just take off. But he's keeping it very close to the chest, which I completely respect. It's difficult from a person in my position to kind of give you guys all the details, but he's not leaning one way or the other. So, West Virginia's also got an offer. These are all teams that could just, anyone could pull out from the ranks that, the only thing you can confidently say right now is that he's from Arizona. I guess Arizona maybe has the lead. I've seen an article or two that says Kentucky. He has a constant, calling, conversation, maybe not weekly or something along those lines, but he has, an ongoing contact with Kentucky assistant coaches, and still with Mark Pope. So maybe Kentucky's got a chance as well. But, these are, I think your guess is as good as mine right now. I think time is going to tell. But we're getting to that point where people are going to start with the visits because basketball is starting up again. I don't know if you guys are counting down. We're getting very dangerously close to watching KU hoops again, all college basketball hoops again. And they're going to want to bring him to see games, see our environment. Kind of, if we could get him to one of these conference games, an Arizona home game, you spank your hometown team right on our floor with the crowd chanting after Darren Peterson pours on 38 and he says, yeah, I want to come here the year after. Are you kidding me? That's what we're looking for. Show them the environment, show them the love, and that's something KU does great at, showing the love. So that's all we've got for today. A couple of recruits we're looking at for a couple of years. I just want to thank you guys so much again for listening. Like, comment, subscribe. But honestly, I really love to hear your guys' opinions. Keep asking me questions. I'll try to answer them in some upcoming pods. But I just appreciate you guys so much. And rock chalk, go Jayhawks.